Greeting, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Antoine Valentin. I'm your host of the IBME UBU show, and joining us today is a very special guest, Dr. Steve Swafford, who is a member of the faculty at Pepperdine Batsidio Business School for almost 8 years, and also CEO of Leadership Outfitters for almost 28 years. Leadership Outfitters is a consortium of 8 primary facilitators and is owned and managed by Steve, who has over 30 years of experience working with nonprofit, volunteer-based organizations, corporations, and public agencies. So really excited and pleased to have you on the show. Have been looking forward to this for a while, and I know I've been pestering you for a while, and you're busy, and I'm grateful that
Not at all. But I appreciate the opportunity. With you, even reading the profile, dude, man, I feel like I'm an old dude. And in my heart, I feel like I'm in my 30s, but obviously those years would not line up to somebody that's in their 30s. But I really appreciate the opportunity to chat and to be with you today. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I wanted to take this opportunity to just, again, learn more about you and, give everyone else an opportunity to learn more about you and your journey. You mentioned, obviously, the years, and obviously with all that time comes a tremendous amount of experience. So I wanted to touch on just sort of your journey and understanding, how you got to where you are from when you started. So just take us back, if you don't mind. I'm curious, when did you know that leadership was something that you were passionate about?
It's an interesting question. I need to think about where this could go. And I was listening to those words, and I remember back in elementary school wanting to do a report on JFK. And for some reason at that time, the concept of leadership and people that were able to mobilize and move people forward in a positive way kind of stuck with me. And then kind of going through junior high and high school, was really involved in leadership roles and student council and officer roles, and that carried into college and then on into life after. But having that leadership, that servant leadership, more that role, not of a you must do it a certain way, but okay, where's the collective want to go? What would be best for the group? What would really stretch us and challenge us to make us uncomfortable, but in a safe way, going in the direction that's positive. I never thought of that until you just asked that question. So I remember an old LP. It's back when they used to have LPs, and they had pressed an LP of JFK's speech. And I don't know why I was fascinated about that back in elementary school, but I just remembered JFK's speech being played on that old 33, that LP. Yeah.
And what was it you think about JFK? Obviously very famous for a variety of reasons. What do you think it's about either what he was saying or how he was saying that sort of inspired that urge within you?
It's a fine line with politics that, of not, advocating or thinking, but I know that the feeling he gave me was of a possibility that we were in a really tumultuous time as a country, and I mean, he was I wasn't even a couple weeks old when he actually was assassinated. But it was just, he was inspired a vision of possibilities of what the country could do and where we could go as a people. And it just seemed like he really came from a strength-based lens of what can we give, not what we don't have. And that same philosophy has moved completely into our company and how we operate, from a strength-based mindset and really thinking about our possibilities and capabilities rather than our deficits and threats.
And I'm wondering, thinking back to that time, I know when I started my leadership journey, like I think a lot of first-time managers, I had a very sort of authoritative approach, which I learned very quickly doesn't work. And I needed to evolve and become more inspirational and supportive. Can you think back about the beginning of your leadership journey? What was your mindset going in? Did you have it sort of figured out already based on, what you had learned to that point in experience? Or maybe did you see it differently then than you do now?
Gosh, it's a really good question. I think our leadership styles and management styles shift based upon life experiences. And It's a really great question. Hmm. My dad was a drill sergeant, and I don't think that informed me going the other way, but I know that even though he came out of a very directive space in the military, his role as an educator was always from a collaboration. So he had structure and discipline. However, I watched a very collaborative approach with him as an administrator and also as an educator. And I think that probably had an influence on me too.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that about you. Obviously, our parents have a tremendous impact on who we are as people.
Sure.
What's it like being the son of a drill sergeant?
I laugh because I learned from my sisters. I had two older sisters, or not had, I still have two older sisters. And I observed everything. That was one of the things as a kid. I was always watching around me, observing things, and he would do the quarter test on beds. We could not leave the house without it everything done. And so I learned early on the engagement with my dad, with my sisters. I said, okay, I need to modify my behavior if I want extra recess or extra playtime on the neighborhood in the weekends. So I learned early on to adapt to different leadership styles. Not that I'm not being authentic, but I also know what's important to people around me, and I want to make sure that those things are are respected, I guess, at times. Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's funny. I know when I was a kid, I sort of I don't know if I want to say resented my parents and their leadership
Oh yeah.
but I gained an appreciation as I aged, and I matured, and then eventually became a father myself. I'm just curious, did you have an appreciation for his leadership style, let's say, as you were a kid, or did you gain a better appreciation for it, or a different even perspective as you aged?
Gosh, yeah, and I'd love to get your feedback too, of what your journey was too with your parents on that, because I think it does inform us. And growing up, what we know in the home is somewhat our known reality, and we think other homes are very similar to that. And as we get out of that, we realize that many people we grew up with had very different, growing up experiences. Um, I look back and I realize where the baggage is. And I want to find the good baggage and I want to
Mhm.
find the bad baggage, hang on to that good baggage and carry that forward and turn in the bad baggage into goodwill to get rid of it. So,
Yeah.
um, did you have a similar experience to kind of think about how
Well,
your parents
right,
informed?
right. So I grew up in the 70s, being yelled at by my parents, and then being yelled at by teachers, and then being yelled at by sports coaches. So when I got into a leadership position, I thought that was the way it was
Oh,
done.
sure.
I didn't know
Sure.
anything. That's what I was sort of raised with. And of course,
Yeah.
that's totally wrong. We don't want to, again, be authoritative, and we don't certainly want to yell at people, etc. But I think it's always been a theory of mine that there's so many leadership books and there's so much interest in leadership development, because
Yeah.
I don't know that my experience was maybe that different from so many others. I think
Mm,
an effective leader is hard and it takes work. And I don't know that there's people that are born leaders. I think it takes a lot of work and effort and training and
sure.
experience. So I think yeah, for me it was definitely a journey, to sort of get to where I am, from where I started, and certainly my childhood experiences were um, uh, hugely influential in that. Um, Talk to me. Go ahead. You want to expand on
Yeah,
it?
yes, because we respect those folks I mean, there's some respect that goes to those different authoritarian, coming out of sports, parents, teachers, all those folks inform us with what our leadership style is. And I had to laugh because oh my gosh, one of my first management jobs, I remember I was in DC and I had a team of 5 and I was coming in, I wanted to make a good impression. So my dad was like I said, drill sergeant, and he instilled a lot of order and structure. So I thought I needed to do that. Not that I was authoritarian, but I was very much on structure and organization. So Kelly knows I tell the story today. Kelly's still a friend, and she had a very different management style, and she went by pile management. So I thought one of my first jobs was I needed to quote fix her because obviously if there's piles, she's not organized. And so I remember getting her not only files but color coded files. I mean, it was obsessive, talking about putting baggage away.
Uh-huh.
But I learned from that. And she said, "Well, I can't find things." And I said, "Kelly, they're in the files, they're in folders. I don't know which folder they're in." So I thought, okay, I'll let her go back to her old way and I'm going to catch her because I'm going to prove to her I'm right. In my head, because I'm thinking, okay, organization, files, do that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I went into her office one time and I remember seeing a pile of folders. And I said, "Kelly, can you get that folder from the California group? And I need it pretty quickly." And she said, "Just a second. It's that pile over there, right below that yellow folder sticking out from the red folder next to it." And she knew exactly where it was. And that was probably one of my biggest aha leadership management roles was like, okay, we all have our organizational systems, but they don't have to replicate ours. But that was my baggage I carried in growing up. I
Yeah.
thought that's what organization looked like.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, it's an amazing story. And again, I think my guess is a lot of people have been through similar situations, and it's an
Sure.
evolution.
Yeah.
So almost 28 years ago, you started
Oh man.
your LLC,
Yeah.
Leadership
Yeah.
Outfitters. Can you talk to me about what that is and what gave you the inspiration to start it?
The group of us, we've all come out of the trade association side. So I was with the National Association of Home Builders in charge of their membership and marketing. And I was at American Subcontractors, which are the folks that don't usually show up on time, or you think of, what are they going to get here to do the drywall, the electrical, the lighting? And I was their executive director. So it was both union shop and open shop firms, and also at the Club Managers Association, which is the private club industry. And so I had a blend of both trade and professional. And the colleague, or Jill, who's the other co-founder within Leadership Outfitters, we thought there had to be a better way to do education. And we were working together at Home Builders at the time. And we were on a multi-site visit out in California, working with the different home builders out in California. And we thought there had to be a better way than just the talking heads around education, that the room set is in rows, and that the only content expert is a person in the front of the room. And so we started to say, how could the room be reimagined, which is pretty common today when you walk in and you see round tables. But at that time, 25, 30 years ago, asking for roundtables for a meeting, they're saying, well, why? Are you just going to have a meal? No, it's about creating community. So early on, we really wanted to emphasize a concept that the body of knowledge is with the group. It's not with the vice president. It's not with the president. It's not the top level. It is, what is the collective of the group? How can we pull out those best ideas? And that was somewhat revolutionary, 2 or 3 decades ago. Not so much now, which is great. I'm glad that this has become more the norm. But at the time, we would fight with groups by saying, no, you're doing education. I said, yes, we know we're doing education. We don't want schoolroom. We don't want people sitting in rows. We want them to talk. Well, how's that possible? So that was the real birth of Leadership Outfitters, was more of a collaborative approach, how bringing the environment. What does the room look like? What do we feed people? Because what we put into our bodies have an impact on our ability to think. And these are all common concepts today. But 25 years ago, people looked at us like we were just strange. Like, what are you talking about? So that was our initial concept, and that's what we really wanted to do. That interactive learning, that the body of knowledge is with the community.
Mm. And in addition to being the CEO, you're the balance warrior, or you're a balance. Or can you clarify what that means?
Yeah, we also wanted to have a very flat organization early on. So Jill, who's the other initial co-founder, there's a group of 8 of us now, but her title is ringleader, because growing up she was always kind of causing trouble or bringing people together to have a dialogue. and mine was balance warrior when there's just two of us. And for me, when I look at balance, it comes up into four areas: is our physical, our spiritual, our emotional, and our intellectual. And where I came with the warrior part is that, it's something that we're always fighting with on a day-to-day basis, even. And it doesn't mean that that fight is bad. It's just that awareness that, are we being fed from our intellectual side? Are we being fed from our physical side? Um, what does that emotional side look like? And what does that balance look like into our relationships, for ourselves, and even into the work environment? So that's where balance warrior came from, is that constant struggle on a day-to-day basis of, did I get enough sleep? Did I hydrate enough? Did I get to the gym? Did I allow my time to just exhale, chill? And that's where the concept balance warrior came from.
Yeah, that's really interesting because as a leader, one thing that I became aware of, first personally, how much things that were going on in my personal life outside of work were having an impact on my work performance. And
Absolutely.
then as a leader, again, I had to be sensitive to my teams and how things going on at home and their personal lives, again, might affect their workplace performance. So can you talk to me about, as a leader, again, helping leaders maybe gain that insight or mindset around, yes, this is a business, but we are all humans, and sometimes external factors will have an impact, and how do we navigate those waters?
I got goosebumps on that question because, gosh, and I'm gonna kind of throw it back to yourself for some examples that what you think, because it's, every team that we either inherit in the workplace or team that we build, we think about their capacity, and we want to be empathetic with life. We also have a deliverable, and so we'll see those cultures of groups that um, will have a very empathetic workspace that's very flex. And then you've got what I call the churn and burns that may have a high name recognition, but they're also known for really burning their folks out.
Mhm.
But yet the experience is really significant. And it, gosh, that's a tough balance. And I think it does shift based upon how the company is growing and what department you're in. I don't know. What are some of your thoughts around that too? I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, obviously, again, as leaders, we have to deliver results. And we have
Yeah, sure.
but certainly, again, as I said, we're all human, and I think we, as leaders, ideally are sensitive to the fact that sometimes, again, in our personal lives, and in the personal lives of our teams, things will happen that will have an impact. And in those cases, I
Yeah.
certainly want to, first make sure the team knows that it's um, okay to speak up and say that maybe they're not at their best for whatever reason. And I've tried to do my best to give people the space and time they need to deal with whatever issues they might be dealing
Mhm.
with, and to and to let them know that it's okay to come back, as soon as they're ready, you know,
Right.
and that as a team, we have to pick each other up because not everyone's going to be at their best all the time.
Right.
Everybody will have their ups and downs, and ideally, I've created a culture and environment where people know that they can count on each other and they can say, "Hey, I need to step away. Can you pick me up?" And teammates will do that. They should do that, I believe. Pick up their teammates. Because there will be a time probably when they will need to be picked up, and they'll appreciate if somebody else is willing to do so. But certainly, again, not my mindset at first. It was an evolution. It took me a while. Um, and that,
And you
but
hit it the, oh, I
Mhm.
could chop. No, please.
No, please go ahead.
No, you hit it. Yeah, it just was like about the culture that you as a leader have created, that culture that if we know that we have each other's backs, we can usually get through any situation that may come on up. That goes back to that positive intent, that if we know that somebody has our back, that we want to show up, that it's not transactional, it's a relational in the workplace. And there are some folks that I still, where I cross from the leadership style. I'm 9 to 5. Don't talk to me before 9 or not after 5. Even if you try to text me, I'm not responding. And it's interesting how some folks are more attracted to certain environments than others, but you hit on the culture. That's one of my hot buttons. And I so appreciate you bringing that up, is that culture of having each other's backs.
Yeah. Um, you've been doing this for almost 28 years. I'm just wondering, you mentioned the evolution and how things have changed from when you started to now. What's more sort of culturally acceptable as far as the
Yeah.
environment, etc. But I know there's that saying, as much as things change, they stay the same. So I'm wondering, in my experience, for every company I've worked at, I swear I've seen the same set of challenges. It seems like for the last 30 years, no matter what, I always see the same. So I'm wondering, have you identified any like something similar with the industries you've worked in, that regardless of how much time has gone by, it seems like every organization struggles with the same, 2 or 3 issues, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's 2 or 3, but I think of the different motivators, and sometimes leaders will think that how they're motivated, other people will be motivated. So whether, 3 big motivators in the workplace are: do I have access to professional development and advancement? The second one would be, what do benefits look like for me and my family? And the third is salary. How much am I being paid? And so I see those as shifting also at where people are in their life. As people go through, they think of, well, healthcare is more important for me and my families as we start to have kids, and for myself. Or early on, it may be professional development, because I can network and meet other peers like myself and learn more skills. And then others, it's just, bottom line. I want to say, I'm starting out at, 6 figures, and I get X number of holiday. And it's understanding that people have different drivers, that it's just not one way to motivate and to recognize and to encourage. Or the plaque and smacks. This is where I call plaque and smack folks, is Jill. And once again, there's just 2 of us initially early on, and she is what I call a plaque and smack person that wants to be rewarded. So she would rather go across the stage, get a plaque, get a trophy, whatever it may be, see the name up on the screen. For me, that's a demotivator. And I know I've got an event coming this summer that I'm going to make an excuse so I don't have to go across the stage and be recognized for something that's coming up this summer. I will find any way possible to do that. I would rather have a simple thank you from the from the group than to be paraded across the stage. And so it's understanding too how we like to be told thank you, how we like to be recognized, and how those kind of shift over time. And I don't think those have shifted at all in the nearly 30 years, as people are motivated by those 3 of salary, benefits, and professional development, and that shifts based upon where they are in their career. I
Yeah.
don't know. Does that make sense, or give me some pushback on that?
It does. It does. And for me, I think when I think about, again, ultimately performance in achieving objectives, I don't want any of my team members to have to worry about those things. Those to me are like basics. Let's make sure we nail those.
Yeah.
So no employee needs to waste any mental energy worrying about, is my comp going to be there? Is my benefits package enough, etc. Those, again, ideally as leaders, I think we need to make sure we satisfy all those needs that are, again, really foundational to a supportive and healthy sort of work environment. That frees up the mental capacity for higher level thinking, higher performance, etc. So, but you're right, not every organization sees it that way, and is often lacking in that regard, and that again affects performance ultimately.
And also when they have those performance goals, if they're territory based, and it almost sets up an internal competition between regions, and sometimes that's really good. It's just understanding there's some people that are really driven by that. And then are you working for the organization with your same set of values, with the same set of motivators that are going to make you successful, which makes the organization successful too?
Indeed. One last question I want to ask you before we move into your Pepperdine experience and how you and I met, obviously.
Sure.
I'm just curious. I know that as from a leadership perspective, it's a journey again. We talked about, where we were when we started our leadership journeys to where we are now. And we learned about also crucibles
Yeah.
and things that happen in our lives that are sort of instrumental, that shape us. So, for example, in my case, it was being open to 360 feedback and having an employee tell me just how bad I was. I was delusional as far as my leadership abilities, and I thought I was this great leader. And someone felt comfortable enough to let me know that that wasn't the case. And that really set me on this path to more introspective self-awareness, and ultimately got me to a place where I was ready to make changes and get better. So I was just wondering, if you're willing to share any personal experience, that stands out in your mind as something that was pivotal in your development, where it may be, it was like a 180 change based on what you experienced.
Those crucible moments do pop up, and some are more intense. I'm thinking probably I grew up in Kansas. I would have been fourth generation farmer. We actually just sold the last piece of land off last year. Fourth generation farmer in the same area in Kansas, but knew early on I didn't want to go into farming. And right after I graduated school at Kansas State, I took a job in DC. So the summer before, I worked at the U.S. Olympic Training Center doing promotion for them. And I've been a huge fan of the Olympics ever since a kid. And that was a real dream internship. And one of the folks I ran across was the World Deaf Team, the promotion person for the time for the World Deaf Team, and promoting all the athletes from the US that was going into the Olympics. And they were also in charge with Gallaudet University in DC. It's a Division III hearing impaired or deaf university. Even within that community, there's two different terms and things were used. And they offered me a job when I graduated from out of Kansas State, to say, would you come be our first sports information director in DC? And I've always been attracted to DC because I never visited there, but I actually decided to take a job. And this is just a little Kansas farm boy moving to DC, and I was going to be on the community at campus where I was going to be a minority. And I grew up in Kansas, white dude, pretty much. There wasn't a lot of cultural diversity around me, but I knew in my heart, I desired that. I wanted to learn about other cultures. And so that was a real crucial moment for me, because I lived in DC. So culturally, I was a minority. I was working for an institution where there was another cultural minority into play. So I went from a very where everybody kind of looked like you or thought like you, immediately into an environment that my living situation was different, my work situation was different. I didn't have any family there, but I knew I wanted to do it. And it was one of those crucible moments that I wanted, because not all crucible moments are what we desire, but I knew it was going to kick my tail. And I had to go with that mindset of, if I'm going to grow as a person, if I'm going to go outside of my county, and no disrespect for my folks or friends that have stayed within, a 60-mile radius, it just, my own desire is there. I knew there was things outside of Kansas that I wanted to experience. And DC, having embassies from all over the world, living in an area I was not familiar with. And it really forced me to grow up pretty quickly, to live my own, do everything on myself that I would not have probably have had. And that was probably I go back at one of my greatest crucible moments that I said yes to. But sometimes we don't have that opportunity to say yes to a crucible. We're just put into it. And it really did refine me.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. So Pepperdine, again, is where we met. I was fortunate enough to have one of my instructors twice in the MSML program, which I really enjoyed. What
Me too.
you to Pepperdine? How did you end up there?
It was also somewhat of not a mistake, but of wanting to get back, because the company's been really successful. We've done well, but I've always had a passion to teach. And so I was going through the California credentialing program to teach at a community college. Well, I already have my doctorate. That's okay. That's all you need to teach at a community college. but I also wanted to do the credential program in California to show the community colleges I was really serious about doing this. This is not just a fly by night, but I was really committed to that population because these are people that are busting their tail during the day and just trying to better their life at night. And I'm about ready to start my in-class experience at Santa Monica College. And I get a call from Pepperdine. And oh, wow, I just got a little bit of emotion coming up. I was trying to tell the story. Was I got a call from a department chair, and she said, "I've heard from two different people. I need to talk to you, and I understand you want to do some teaching, but you're focused on community colleges." I said, "Yeah, just the drive of how people juggle their life." And she said, "Well, would you consider doing that at Pepperdine in our professional programs of people that are busting their tail during the day and working on their development at night?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely, because that's where my passion is, to help people." And Pepperdine has a kind of a prestigious reputation that in our professional programs, it's not like our undergrad programs. Our professional folks are from all aspects, I mean, across the board, to some extent to our undergrad programs, but our professional folks, it is such a diverse learning platform with so many folks, different stories and interests. And so that's how I came into Pepperdine, taught a couple classes for 2 years. And then I got an offer after 3 years, would you be willing to do this full time? And I, I'm happily, I'm one of the few faculty that get to do both behavior sciences and org development. Most faculty in our department will either be applied behavior sciences or organizational theory management. And I like being able to go back and forth because that's what we do in my work on a regular basis. So that's how I stumbled across Pepperdine and how our paths got across, which I'm blessed for, very much so.
Yeah, me too. And talk to me about, again, your thoughts on higher education. And there's been a lot of talk lately because of information being available at everyone's fingertips on the internet, and also now uh, uh, AI tools like ChatGPT and otherwise, the value of a higher education. So can you just talk about, your feelings regarding sort of the value of higher learning, specifically at Pepperdine, because of the unique sort of experience that students have there?
Yeah, I'm going to flip the question on you at the very, very end, but I just want to answer the first part because I want to ask, what were when you look back, what were your top, 3 or 4 takeaways and, how it's resonated because you invested a lot, not just financially, but time away from family, time away from social. Um, do you have maybe 3 or 4 that are top of mind? And then I'll go right into that question, I promise. But do you have 3 or 4 that are
No,
top of
look,
mind
for
for you?
me, it was 100% worth every penny, every second spent, and I consider myself lucky and very grateful for the experience. Again, for me, it was mostly virtual. I can't imagine how much better it would be in person. My older son
Yeah.
is 16, and we're hoping that he'll go to Pepperdine in a couple of years when he graduates high
Nice.
school. But it was
Nice.
great for me, and I think that anyone who has any doubts should definitely reconsider and go for it.
Yeah. It it is. It just folks like yourself. That's what makes it so valuable for myself. And when we're looking at the future of education, one of our clients right now is it's nearly a 200-year-old institution. It's in the Midwest. Um, University. I just want to keep their profile somewhat anonymous, and they are going through that process. We're doing their strategy for them for the next 3 to 5 years is what we're looking at for them, and how education shifted so much. And is their location a sticky point? Something that would draw people. What makes them stand out when there's other private institutions around them not healthy? Now they are very healthy, but it's looking at what does education look like moving forward for them. And even into that environment, to see they came from a very top down president that was very dictatorial, and that it was there was a lot of unhealthy tensions going on. And so the future of the institution was not upbeat, maybe early on. And what I found working with them is how they're viewing education is that there's so many different ways in how people access education, like you just mentioned, free education, certificates, and then how to wrap those desires into the current construct of higher ed. And is it going to be the same population? No. Is it going to be a shift? Must. And AI will continue to shift that too, of how people access information.
Indeed. Steve, this has been a wonderful conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're very busy and you were gracious enough to carve out a little bit of time for this, so I'm super grateful. Any parting words or advice again for young leaders that are looking to get better? Any guidance that you can share that is tangible would be appreciated.
I'll share one, and I'd love for you to bounce back with what you would maybe share too. The first thing that comes to mind is always self-care. Of that, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be doing good for anything from work, family, personal relationships, and just even for your own journey. Is there one thing that pops up to you on your perspective?
Yeah, believe it or not, we're very much aligned. Actually, not surprisingly, as far as the way I see it is, my beliefs are on three pillars: body, mind, and spirit. So definitely focus on those three areas to be at your best. I think we can stop there and we can do a part two at some point.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
But thanks again. I really appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you.